Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to get started here this afternoon, and we'll start with the University of Maryland Global Campus. Kelly Norton is our budget analyst, and Dr. Fowler, you can come to the table whenever you'd like. Bring whoever you'd like.
Okay, we are going to start on page 5. Exhibit 1 shows total undergraduate enrollment and category changes from fall 2018 to 2024. Total undergraduate enrollment increased by 1,394 students, or 2.7%, from fall 2023 to 2024. As is illustrated in the exhibit, all categories had increased except first-time full-time students. Total undergraduate enrollment in fall 2024 reached 52,187 students. Exhibit 2 on page 6 looks at UMGC's FTEs enrollment relative to the University System of Maryland as a whole. As shown in Exhibit 2, FTEs enrollment at UMGC represents a growing share of total USM FTEs enrollment. From 2018 through 2024, UMGC represented the largest share of FTEs enrollment for USM, with College Park representing the second largest portion. Moving to student performance, Exhibit 3 on page 7 provides the second and third year retention rates for transfer students. The second year retention rate decreases to 64% for the 2023 cohort, and the third year retention rate has held steady at 47% for the 2021 cohort. Exhibit 4 on page 8 provides the 4- and 6-year graduation rates for transfer students. As shown in the exhibit, the 6-year graduation rate increased to 26% for the 2019 cohort compared to the 2018 cohort. The 4-year graduation rate has decreased to 24% for the 2021 cohort. Exhibit 5 on page 9 provides the 8-year graduation rate by Pell and non-Pell recipient status. Pell-eligible students graduate at higher rates than non-Pell-eligible students in all of the identified categories except full-time, first-time students. Exhibit 6 on page 10 shows the amount of institutional aid awarded and total dollar amount of awards provided by category. The amount of institutional aid awarded has increased from $13 million in fiscal 2019 to $19.6 million in fiscal 2024. Merit scholarships totaled $12.3 million in fiscal 2024. UMGC attributes the large percentage of the aid going to merit rather than need-based aid due to the Maryland Completion Scholarship, which allows Maryland Community College graduates to transfer to UMGC to complete a bachelor's degree for under an additional $12,000 in total costs. This program is not need-based aid and accounts for the large amount of institutional aid going towards merit scholarships. The U.S. Department of Education reports the median debt and earnings for graduates by field of study in an effort to give students a better picture of outcomes at the program level. Exhibit 7 on page 11 illustrates that the median debt of students range from $12,500 for nursing majors to over $26,000 for non-professional general legal studies majors. As is also shown in the exhibit, computer and information science majors attained the highest median earnings, which total over $103,000. Moving to the budget, Exhibit 8 on page 13 provides the budget changes for unrestricted funds by program from fiscal 2024 to 2025. The largest dollar change was in student services, which grows by $22.5 million. The next largest change comes from instruction, which increases by $8.3 million. The expenditure increases across the programs is driven by the associated costs of enrollment growth and salary adjustments. Exhibit 9 on page 14 shows the education and general expenditures have exceeded revenue in 5 of the last 7 fiscal years. In fiscal 2025, the E&G deficit is expected to be $17.5 million. When universities face these deficits, they use auxiliary revenue to cover the difference. Auxiliary revenue comes from residential halls, food services, parking services, and bookstores. However, as a non-traditional university, UMGC lacks this revenue source. Therefore, UMGC relies on the fund balance to cover these deficits. The president should comment on how the university is addressing the financial situation, the sustainability of using fund balance over the long term to support E&G expenses, and how it is working to bring its expenses more in line with revenues. The proposed fiscal 2026 budget found in Exhibit 10 on page 15 identifies that total state funding decreases by $0.2 million. State funds actually decreased by $2.6 million when excluding the impact of the fiscal 2025 general salary increase in fiscal 2026. The president should comment on how the institution will address the reduction in state support. Exhibit 11 on page 16 provides a breakdown of unrestricted revenues by source and total unrestricted funds. The ratios for these levels have remained roughly stable over this period. The fiscal 2026 allowance anticipates tuition and fee revenue of $441.5 million, an increase of 3.6% or $15.2 million compared to fiscal 2025. The personnel data can be found on page 17. In fiscal 2026, the number of contractual full-time equivalents increased by 165.09. The president should provide a reason for the continuing increase in contractual FTEs in fiscal 2025 and 2026. Issues begin on page 18. The first issue covers the UMGC HIDA entities. The enactment of Chapter 450 of 2012 laid the groundwork for HIDA entities at USM institutions. The chapter, initially proposed by USM, provides flexibility and relief from state ethics law and procurement practices to help facilitate and encourage technology transfer and commercialization activities that are expected to result in a significant economic impact for the institution, USM, or Maryland. Since 2015, UMGC has created 3 HIDA entities. The first was approved in September 2015, Helio Campus, a spinoff of its Office of Analytics. The second HIDA entity is UMGC Ventures. The third entity is Accelerate. Ventures is a holding company for the other 2 HIDA entities. It manages Accelerate and has an equity investment in Helio Campus. During OLA's most recent fiscal compliance audit, 3 findings were raised related to the HIDA entities. I won't go into much detail because OLA is here today, but the audit raised issues with the lack of competitive procurements, not properly monitoring an IT project, and whether if the HIDAs are still in the best interest of UMGC and the state, since UMGC accounted for 92% of Ventures revenues from fiscal 2017 to 2022. The audit also raised issues of transparency in relation to institutions and their HIDA entities due to financial documents connected to the HIDA entities not being readily accessible to auditors. USM Board of Regents created a HIDA task force. The task force submitted its final recommendations to revise the HIDA policy on February 14, 2025. Those recommendations addressed issues of transparency, fiscal oversight, remove procurement exemptions, and excludes reductions in university employees as being considered a high-impact economic development activity. The president should comment on the actions that UMGC has taken to address the HIDA-related findings in the OLA audit, as well as how the institution will ensure compliance with the task force's recommendations. The second issue begins on the bottom of page 20 and looks at the advertising campaign. In calendar 2019, UMGC was authorized by USM Board of Regents and approved by BPW to spend up to $500 million in advertising costs over 6 years, beginning in fiscal 2019. UMGC has spent approximately $326 million of the approved $500 million. Exhibit 12 on page 21 shows UMGC's marketing campaign spending from fiscal 2020 to 2025 and students gained from the marketing spend. UMGC contends that on average over 22,000 students have been gained each year from the campaign. Exhibit 13 on page 22 shows the enrollment patterns. Out-of-state enrollment has increased from 59.2% in fall 2019 to 64.8% in fall 2024. Since 2019, enrollment has increased by over 4,700 students. The president should comment on how UMGC measures students gained from the marketing campaign. UMGC had placed an item on the October 2nd, 2024 BPW agenda for approval to spend up to $450 million in advertising over a period of 6 years. That item was subsequently withdrawn with discussion. The president should comment on whether the institution plans to reintroduce that item. The Department of Legislative Services recommends adopting committee narrative requesting that UMGC submit a comprehensive report on the national marketing campaign. The DLS operating budget recommended actions is found on page 23, and that is to adopt narrative requesting report on the national marketing campaign. The only update is on page 24 and concerns the sale proceeds of UMGC's Largo properties. Exhibit 14 shows the planned use for the $62 million being transferred to the university's operating fund balance. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Nice job. Thank you very much. You covered a lot. I am told by my consciences up here that we have to have the auditors come to the table first, and then we'll have the president come. Members have any questions for Kelly? Senator Benson?
Yes,
This is for Kelly. Do you have questions for her? We'll let the auditors speak first.
I think my questions need to be directed at is this the auditor?
Yes. Okay.
You're the ones that we need to ask the question. Okay, we'll wait for your presentation, then we'll ask the question.
Yeah, they can go through their presentation first, and then you'll ask. Okay, that's fine. Okay, welcome.
Thank you, Senator King and members of the Education, Business, and Administration Subcommittee for the opportunity to address the committee about our recent fiscal compliance audit of UMGC. My name is Adam Westover. I was the audit manager for the fiscal compliance portion of the audit. With me is Mindy Garrett. She was the senior auditor for the audit. Also in attendance is Josh Adler. He's in the back for moral support. He's a director for the Compliance Department's division of our office. Next slide. Not used to hitting the next slide myself. As indicated on slide 2 of the report, we had 7 findings. Our audit period was October 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2022. It should be noted that UMGC addressed the 4 findings from our previous audit report issued in November of 2019, which means there was no repeat findings. We're here today to talk about the 2 key findings in the report related to advertising contracts. It should be noted that the first 3 findings in the report related to the HIDAs as discussed in the analysis. We spoke at a joint audit committee hearing in November on those findings, and they're also again mentioned in the budget analysis under issue 1. Slide 4 presents some background information on the advertising contracts, which were findings 4 and 5 in our report. In January 2019, UMGC competitively procured 2 advertising master contracts totaling $500 million, each with a 6-year term as part of a public relations campaign to increase out-of-state enrollment. The contracts had a total of 9 vendors, 4 for one contract, 5 for another, that met specific technical qualifications to provide various online and offline marketing services. UMGC paid $175.4 million from February 2019 through December 22. That was in our audit report. There's updated numbers in the analysis. UMGC's enrollment decreased from 91,385 in fiscal 2019 to 86,582 in fiscal year 22, with non-Maryland resident enrollment going from 55,573 to 54,348 over the same period. Our audit report has a table with the numbers year by year on page 20 in our audit report. UMGC also procured certain digital and radio-focused advertising as annual sole source contracts from a separate vendor. The value of these contracts was $3.1 million over fiscal years 2020 through 2023. Slide 5 is the 5th finding in our report. UMGC did not have formal procedures for selecting vendors from the contracted list of pre-approved vendors, such as the basis for selection and required documentation supporting the selection. A competitive procurement process within the pre-qualified vendors was not used. Although UMGC was initially going to request that proposals for individual task orders be obtained from all eligible vendors, it subsequently removed that language from the request for proposal. They now issue statements of work to selected vendors to do marketing projects. We were advised, although the selection process is not documented, authorized employees made selections based on the vendor's initial technical proposal and determination for which vendor would be the best suited for a specific service. However, the selection process did not document or ensure the most cost-effective selection had been made for each task. Statement of works did not include specific services or deliverables to be performed, such as the number of commercials to be aired, specific timeframes, or specific media outlet. SOWs also did not include performance measures to enable UMGC to determine how successful the advertising services provided by the contractors were in increasing enrollment. UMGC advised these specifics are discussed with vendors verbally, but without a formal record, there was no basis to hold the vendor accountable and to ensure that all services and deliverables were received, as well as verify the level of success realized by the contracts. UMGC disagreed with our recommendation related to using a competitive procurement within the pre-qualified vendors, saying it was not necessary or practical given its business model for advertising. We noted in the report the original intention was to provide competition among the pre-qualified vendors and was included in the request for proposal, which was later removed. With competition, UMGC would be in a position to determine and select the most capable and cost-effective vendor. We continue to believe the use of a competitive procurement among the pre-qualified vendors is appropriate. I'm going to turn it over to Mindy for the fifth finding.
Thank you, members of the committee, for the opportunity to discuss our audit report. As Adam said, my name is Mindy Garrett, and I was the senior auditor for this audit. Slide 6 is the fifth finding in our report. UMGC did not adequately justify annual sole source contracts for 2 advertising contracts with the same vendor, one for digital marketing services and the other for radio advertising services. And they did not consolidate the annual contracts for each service, which we believe circumvented USM approval requirements for these services. Annual sole source procurements were done each year during fiscal years 2020 to 2023 for $475,000 and $300,000 for each contract. UMGC used similar justifications for both contracts each year and noted that UMGC could contract with other advertising vendors, but that this vendor was the only source with this level of marketing coverage and ability to reach military, veterans, and service members that UMGC wanted. However, our cursory search identified at least one other vendor which stated it was able to provide similar services. Also, UMGC's sole source justification also inferred that price was a consideration, even though price is not to be considered a factor in justifying a sole source procurement. Slide 7 is our conclusion slide. There were a number of detailed recommendations made to UMGC that we will assess that status during our next audit. Thanks again for your time, and we are happy to take any questions.
Senator Benson, do you have a question?
Thank you very much for your testimony this afternoon. I am now the chair of the procurement committee here with budget and tax and budget and taxation, and there has been some concerns relative to the procurement. From what I'm gathering, the procurement process has been removed. Is that true? Or could you explain to me how you all have been able to solve the problem of procurement?
Thank you for that question. That's a very good question. There's actually been a bill introduced during this session. I'm sure you're aware of it. And there's an attempt to remove some of the procurement exemptions. If you're probably referring to some of the first 3 findings that relate to the HIDAs, that UMGC is exempt when procuring services from their HIDA. I believe if that bill passes, that would remove that exemption.
So the legislation is before us now?
Yes, we were at a hearing a couple of weeks ago on the Senate side. The House side is coming up soon.
Okay. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Senator Quarterman.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. I had a question back towards the end of your presentation when you were talking about the sole source and that the university indicated that the entity they used was because they were the only one that could do this. And then you mentioned, oh no, we found one other one. So one, right? You found one other one. Is that what your statement was?
Correct.
And how did you find them?
I believe we just did some Google searches for that
So
sort
do
of
we know anything
services.
about that one-other one, like who else they've worked with, what their reputation is? Have they been able to provide adequate services, or is your statement just, we found one by Googling, and so that one that they had before, then we should look to this one? Because I guess I struggle with that because we don't know who that one other one is. Or, I mean, I understand your position to a certain point, but also at the same time, we have no idea who this one other person is and what type of service they were provided, and if that would have been the right fit. So I guess that was the question as far as who this other person or entity was and what we knew about them, but it doesn't sound like we know a whole lot about anything.
I don't know the entity's name off the top of my head right now, but what we can do is when we go back to work at the office, I can get the name and I can get that to you.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Let me thank the auditors for being here today. You know, I live in the Washington DC corridor, and I see commercials on my TV about maybe it seems like one every minute. So it's good to have the backup and see what the budget is and where we're going with that. So I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Fowler, want to come back? Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Seen you lots this session. It's been very nice.
I'm getting my steps in from eating too many Thanksgiving dinners. We're ready?
Go ahead.
And so Chair King and members of the committee, thank you for your time. And as always, we want to say thank you to Kelly Norton for her diligent work and analysis, and of course to Adam Westover and Mindy Garrett for their work on the audit side. We very much appreciate all the work that's gone into this. I always appreciate my opportunities to visit Annapolis because everywhere I turn, I see evidence of the work our team does in Maryland, from the legislators who have taught for UMGC to the office staff who proudly display UMGC credentials on their walls. A few weeks ago, I was sitting in the Senate canteen when one of our recent graduates, May Beal, an octogenarian, walked in with her trademark smile and stopped to tell us that she was working down here in Annapolis, still making a difference and still inspiring others to continue learning. And this is, of course, the unique challenge and charter of UMGC in Maryland, to provide opportunities for learners whose lives do not allow them to commit to rigid schedules or face-to-face learning opportunities. Some 80% of our learners who are here are employed full-time, and almost half of them are parents with dependent children. Many are seeking to transform their lives while also living their lives, and many have tried college before without success, likely in many cases more than once. Others have completed an associate's degree at a community college and now need a flexible learning experience that accommodates their work and family priorities. We are grateful for the state's support and believe that the funds invested in UMGC have delivered exceptional results. Last year, more than 31,000 Marylanders took courses from UMGC, and more than 5,200 graduated. Many of those learners stay here in Maryland. And today, more than 111,000 UMGC graduates live, work, and raise families in the state. UMGC also continues to advance Maryland's goals of accessibility and affordability, enrolling more community college transfer students than any other university, and enabling them to earn a four-year degree with little or no debt, thanks to our Maryland Completion Scholarship and other scholarships that provided more than $21 million in support to learners last year alone. We also want to thank the state for their support in the Completion Scholarship. Earlier, I mentioned the exceptional May Beal, and she is not alone. In 2024, more than 700 Marylanders over 60 years of age studied tuition-free at UMGC through Maryland's Golden ID program. We're able to continue this work by leveraging our global scale while also maintaining one of the lowest tuition rates for four-year universities in the state. Please bear in mind that UMGC operates as a tuition-driven institution. More than 80% of our operating funds come from tuition tied to our global operations. And our strategy has been to increase both our new enrollments and the number of current students who succeed in gaining skills for credentials that they sought when they came to UMGC. I was asked to speak to the investments we're making out of our fund balance. To be clear, these are not meant to be long-term operational practices. They are investments we are using to transform UMGC, including upgrading our technology, learning, and cybersecurity capabilities in more than 20 countries where we're teaching or testing on the ground. Our strategy has been to demonstrate sustainable growth in the markets that generate margin for us, out-of-state, corporate, and graduate students, while remaining true to our mission of serving Maryland students and the military. We've demonstrated that growth for 3 straight years now. At the same time, we've piloted several initiatives successfully to improve student success, satisfaction, and persistence. We're also seeing new success in being awarded grants, such as the $4 million grant last year from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. These new abilities and funding sources are part of our long-term strategy for sustainability. The fastest growing learner population in the country is the adult population. It is also the population least likely to engage in traditional learner models. Indeed, we at UMGC operate knowing that for most of our learners, we will never be higher than their 3rd priority after family and work. Governor Moore is one of more than 20 governors who have taken action to ensure that a traditional college experience is not the only path to economic mobility. At UMGC, we see the opportunity to provide shorter-term experiences that ultimately stack into degrees, or the ability to credential skills that are acquired in the workforce as key elements of our expanding portfolio, and another source of revenue that can be developed while restraining expenses. The $500 million marketing authorization approved by the Maryland Board of Public Works in January of 2019 was a 6-year spend authorization that drives the enrollments and partnerships that fuel our operations and generate more than 80% of our revenue. Our marketing efforts have a lifetime value that equates to a 1-to-5 ratio, with every dollar that we spend generating $5 in revenue. So the $60+ million we spend in 2024 can be expected to generate more than $340 million in revenue. Other national universities that enroll Maryland students spend more than twice what UMGC does on marketing and advertising, and yet we have remained competitive. Last year, our marketing costs were, like I said, $60+ million. Here are a few examples of what our nonprofit competitors are spending, all with resulting rising enrollments. Southern New Hampshire University spent $195 million. Western Governors spent $186 million. Purdue Global spent $117, and National University spent $108 million. In a recent budget testimony, the Maryland Higher Education Commission referenced this competitive environment, noting that almost half the students from Maryland who enrolled exclusively in distance education programs are enrolled in programs in Arizona, Virginia, the District of Columbia, Utah, and New Hampshire, end of quote. Predictably, these, of course, are the homes of our major competitors, such as Arizona State, Liberty, Strayer, Western Governors, and Southern New Hampshire University, respectively. The strategies we have deployed post-pandemic have resulted in 3 years of double-digit growth, increasing our overall new headcount served by 10,000 students since 2022. In fact, last year, UMGC celebrated the largest fall start in its 78-year history, enrolling almost 95,000 learners and granting more than 16,000 degrees and certificates worldwide. In the past couple of weeks, we also broke our spring start record, and there are still a few spring starts that will commence in the months ahead. Like any complex business, we measure our marketing campaign by its overall impact on our numbers. Most learners, for example, don't see a single bus sign or hear a radio or television commercial and immediately enroll, especially if they have not been previously successful or if they question whether or not they are quote-unquote college material. In fact, many of our learners don't enroll for months after hearing of UMGC. Success is measured in part by whom they search for and call when they ultimately decide to enroll in a university. This is why brand recognition is so important for us. Many of my legislative friends in this room distribute yard signs and T-shirts for much the same reason, knowing that when the time comes to pull the lever, familiarity is a big part of the selection. This is why, in addition to new enrollments, one of our key metrics is increasing brand awareness, using measures like national awareness, where we grew from 12% to 21% from 2023 to 2024. While this is good progress, we still have plenty of room to grow, considering Southern New Hampshire University and Arizona State are around 50%, with national populations double our own. With that in mind, given our success in increasing enrollment and revenue, we do plan to submit a request to BPW in the upcoming months to continue moving forward with our marketing. During our audit, 2 items came up related to marketing. The first was around UMGC language in the solicitation document, which had been inadvertently copied from a non-media contract and suggested that a secondary procurement process was occurring. This was something that had not previously happened, never was intended to happen, and would actually be counterproductive given how the process works. This language was discovered and removed during the RFP process, and everything moved forward as appropriate, with BPW granting approval 6 months later. We have communicated this to OLA. Still, we agree that we will provide more detailed documentation in relation to the selection of and the assignment of work to pre-qualified vendors, and will do so through formalized procedures, more detailed SOWs, and the establishment of clear performance metrics when establishing those SOWs. In the second instance, UMGC used an annual contract instead of a multi-year contract for 2 different services. 1, for a unique military veteran-specific radio broadcasting service, and 2, for digital advertising in multiple veteran-oriented segments. The goal was to review for performance for a year before making a decision about renewing, given the novelty of the services. Again, both services were very specific in nature for veterans in a given marketplace, which is why they were sole sourced for an initial year. We decided to renew the contract. OLA found that if the initial contract had been for multi-year activity instead of a single year, it would have needed to go before BPW. We have agreed, and moving forward with such contracts, we're going to use the competitive sealed proposal method to ensure that there are no other available vendors, and also to use a multi-year contractual approach when there is a possibility that we might extend. As we promised this past fall after our audit, UMGC has been working with a third-party vendor to consider what services UMGC Ventures and Accelerate should provide to UMGC, the University System of Maryland, and the state. As we previously noted, the education landscape and the ed tech industry have changed dramatically in the 10 years since UMGC stood up its affiliates. And we've learned a great deal from both our own experiences and from the experiences of other nonprofit public and private institutions with large online footprints. We will provide the results of that analysis in the upcoming months, and we remain committed to ensuring that all of our operations comply with state policies and regulations. At our most recent Board of Regents meeting, the board presented the results and recommendations of its review of HIDA entities. Updates presented to the board include clarification on eligible activities, improved transparency in reporting, audit requirements, and removal of procurement exemptions. The board will vote on these in an upcoming meeting, and UMGC supports these recommendations. Additionally, the board and USM, including UMGC, have voiced support for Senate Bill 439, Senator Lamb's bill updating the HIDA structures. I was asked to comment on 2 other items. On the topic of our continuing increase in contractual FTEs, UMGC forecasts continued growth over the next 2 years and will need more practitioner instructors or other functions either online or in various locations around the globe to provide those services. On the question of how UMGC will absorb the state cuts, let me echo Chancellor Perman's commitment to do all of our part in these challenging fiscal times. All universities will be impacted, and for UMGC, the additional volatility surrounding our 200 global locations adds additional uncertainty, especially for those directly connected to military policies and activities. Our plans are evolving, and firm decisions will be made when the full funding picture is clear for FY26. Again, on behalf of our entire UMGC family, we want to thank you so much for your support. We look forward to continuing to play our part in making Maryland's adult workforce one of the best in the nation and serving our military and civilian learners around the globe as they work to transform their lives and the lives of their families. And now I'd be pleased, of course, to answer any questions.
Thorough job. Thank you.
Thank you.
And let me just say from our committee, as we hear the same news that you hear every day on the TV, I'm committed to, and all of us are committed to working to make sure that the university system isn't any more affected than it absolutely has to be. That's our bottom line. And really look forward to working with you to come to that conclusion.
Thank you, Chair King.
Okay, any comments from anyone? I think we're good. Thank you very much. Okay, is there anybody that wanted to testify or to witness here? There was Mrs. Harris. Okay, didn't miss anybody. Okay, next we'll go with the Maryland Department of Labor. Scott Benson is our budget analyst, and Secretary Portia Wu is here. Or not?
I'm sure the team's on their way in.
Okay, thank you. Let's start.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
There we go.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Today I'll be presenting the analysis for the Department of Labor. The Department of Labor is responsible for administering workforce development, adult education, paid family leave, and unemployment insurance programs. You can see in the operating budget summary, the fiscal 2026 budget increases by $102.9 million, or 16.6%, to $722.3 million. Moving on to the performance analysis. The first item involves occupational safety and health complaints beginning to decrease in 2024. The MOSH Act generally requires employers to provide each employee with employment and a place of employment that is safe, healthful, and free from recognized hazards. You can see in Exhibit 1 on page 7 the number of occupational health and safety complaints investigated by the department between fiscal 2015 and 2024. Complaints investigated by MOSH increased significantly in fiscal 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic and continue to increase in fiscal years 2022 and 2023. Between fiscal 2023 and 2024, the number of complaints investigated decreased from 232 to 191. But despite this decrease, the number of complaints investigated remains 62% above the level seen in fiscal 2019. Moving on to correctional education. In 2008, the Correctional Education Council, or CEC, was established as a partnership between the Department of Labor and the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services to develop educational workforce training programs for correctional institutions. CEC works closely with the Correctional Education, or CE, staff at the Department of Labor to provide educational programs for inmates. You can see in Exhibit 2 on page 8 the total number of students served, as well as the number of certificates received at each literacy level in the CE program. The number of CE students had been declining prior to the pandemic, but the number served rebounded somewhat in fiscal 2023 before decreasing again in fiscal 2024 to 3,140 students. Moving on to the fiscal 2024 budget. One finding contained in the statewide review of the budget closeout transactions for fiscal year 2024, released in January 2025 by the Office of Legislative Audits, or OLA, involved the Department of Labor. Specifically, OLA noted in the fifth finding that Labor was unable to support accrued federal fund revenue entries totaling $204.7 million. This includes a $67.6 million entry that Labor was aware was not recoverable, as it had exceeded the related federal grant. Additionally, OLA noted that Labor had recorded 18 positive accrued revenue entries, but was unable to ensure if the amounts were proper. Moving on to fiscal 2025, there were a few cost containment actions. In its July 17, 2024 meeting, the Board of Public Works approved 5 cost containment actions impacting Labor to reduce the fiscal 2025 appropriation by $4.9 million. Additionally, Section 21 of the fiscal 2025 budget bill added $4.4 million in general funds for the implementation of legislative priorities. Moving on to proposed deficiencies. The fiscal 2026 budget includes 7 proposed deficiencies for Labor, a net increase of $15.9 million for the fiscal 2025 appropriation, which general funds consist of the majority of the deficiency appropriation, with the largest proposed deficiency being $19 million, using general funds to increase administrative expenses for the Office of Unemployment Insurance. Now, moving on to the fiscal 2026 overview of agency spending. The fiscal 2026 allowance totals $722.3 million, and you can see in Exhibit 3 on page 12, the Division of Racing accounts for 30% of the fiscal 2026 allowance, which is a 4% decrease compared to its share in fiscal 2025. Workforce development programs comprise 23% of the allowance, while unemployment insurance represents 21% of planned spending. Moving on to the proposed budget change. You can see in Exhibit 4 on page 13, the fiscal 2026 allowance increases by $102.9 million, of which $103.3 million is in special funds, primarily for the family program and the new unemployment insurance administrative fee. Under current law, and as reflected in the fiscal 2026 allowance, the family program is set to begin receiving contributions on July 1st, 2025, and $66.8 million is included in the fiscal 2026 allowance from that fund. Moving on to the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act, or the BRFA. A provision in the BRFA would establish a new administrative fee for the administration of unemployment insurance. Under the provision, beginning January 1st, 2026, a fee of 0.15% would be applied to all taxable employers, and the revenue raised from that amount will be deposited into the Special Administrative Expense Fund for administrative expenses of the UI program. Chapter 485 of 2022 established the New Start Grant Program.
I'm losing you here. Where are you now?
I apologize, I'm on page 16. Chapter 485 of 2022 established the New Start Grant Program, which also required the governor to include an annual appropriation of $200,000 between fiscal 2026 and 2028. A provision in the BRFA would reduce the mandate for the program to $50,000. Chapter 34 of 2016 created the Construction Education and Innovation Center. Chapter 493 of 2023 increased the mandate for the program from $250,000 to $625,000 for fiscal 2025 through 2029, while provision in this year's BRFA would reduce the mandate to $531,250. Chapter 403 of 2022 created the Career Pathways for Healthcare Workers program, which required the governor to include $1 million for the program beginning in fiscal 2023, while provision in the BRFA would reduce the mandate to $500,000. And the last item for the BRFA, chapters 294 and 295 of 2024 created the Montgomery and Prince George's County Rent Court Workforce Solutions Pilot Program, and the governor is required to include $100,000 for programs in each county between fiscal 2026 and 2028, while provision in the BRFA of 2025 proposes to eliminate the mandate for the program, and language in the fiscal 2026 budget bill would reduce the general fund appropriation by $200,000, contingent on that provision. Now moving on to the purse dedication account, or the PDA. This is an account under the authority of the State Racing Commission to be used to support horse racing purses and bread funds in the state. As of February 2025, the PDA is expected to receive $83.1 million in fiscal 2026 from video lottery terminal, or VLT, revenues. PDA receives 6% of VLT proceeds up to $100 million. The fiscal 2026 estimated revenues to the PDA is an increase of $3.5 million compared to fiscal 2025. Moving on to personnel, the fiscal 2026 allowance includes an increase of 125 regular positions across the department, all of which are located in the Office of Unemployment Insurance and will serve as an in-house support for its call center. Additionally, contractual full-time equivalent positions decreased by a net of 37.1. Moving on to issues. The first issue to discuss is the Family and Medical Leave Insurance Program, specifically implementation. Chapter 48 of 2022 established the Family Program, which is meant to provide up to 12 weeks of benefits to a covered individual who's taken leave from employment due to caring for certain family members, the individual's own serious health conditions, or a qualifying event arising out of a family member's military deployment. Back in September 2023, Labor had set the initial total rate of contribution at 0.9% of covered wages. Now, chapters 266 and 267 of 2024 altered the initial planned timeline for the program so that required contributions would begin on July 1st, 2025, and benefit claims would begin on July 1st, 2026. In a press release on February 14, 2025, Labor announced a proposed 18-month delay of the implementation of the family program so that required contributions would begin on January 1st, 2027, and the benefits would begin on January 1st, 2028. Labor has indicated that it would propose amendments to a current departmental bill for this change. However, it's unclear which bill specifically the department anticipates proposing amendments to or when this will occur. Moving on to the current fiscal 2026 allowance for the program, you can see in Exhibit 5 on page 20, the funding provided for family administrative costs by fund source since fiscal 2024. As program implementation is expected to ramp up, funding is budgeted to significantly increase in fiscal 2026 to $81.6 million, an increase of $47.1 million, with a total of $66.8 million in special funds anticipated from the Family Fund, following the implementation of the contributions to the fund. In addition to the increase in special funds, federal funds from the American Rescue Plan Act slightly decreased by $400,000 to $14.8 million. Of the $66.8 million of special funds in the fiscal 2026 allowance, the fiscal note for Senate Bill 355 of 2025, which is legislation that would delay the implementation of the program by 2 years, indicated that the program would only be expected to expend $51.6 million. Moving on to the impact of the proposed delay on funding needs and revenue. As there's no current bill that includes Labor's proposal, DLS has evaluated the impact of this change on the department's revenue and funding needs using the fiscal note for Senate Bill 355, which proposes to delay the implementation of the family program by 2 years rather than 18 months. Although the proposals have different delay lengths, under both there would be no contributions in fiscal 2026. Therefore, the Family Fund could not be used for program expenses. This would be expected to result in the elimination of special funds from the fiscal 2026 appropriation, and as a result, Labor would be expected to require $34 million in general funds according to the fiscal note for Senate Bill 355. Additionally, partially offsetting the increasing need for general funds in Labor would be savings in the Maryland Department of Health. Under current law, the Department of Health is required to reimburse certain service providers for some or all of the employer's share of family contributions. The delay of the family program's implementation would be expected to decrease their general and federal fund expenditures by approximately $29.8 million. Moving on to the second issue, unemployment insurance. Overall, Labor's fiscal 2026 allowance for this Office of Unemployment Insurance increases by $21.8 million to $136.5 million. Additionally, 125 regular positions are being added to the Office of Unemployment Insurance, which is meant to support the transition from a contract call center operated by Accenture to an in-house support as the contract with Accenture ends on March 15th, 2025. The goal of this transition is to end Labor's dependency on a costly external vendor and find ways to increase efficiency by using agency staff. As you can see in Exhibit 6 on page 23, Labor has handled an unprecedented volume of claims during the pandemic due to both regular claims as well as the major expansion in eligibility from the newly created federal pandemic unemployment insurance programs. The number of claims increased in calendar 2024 to 1.2 million from 1.1 million in calendar 2023. This is the first increase since calendar 2020. Given the high volume of claims during the pandemic, Labor has struggled to pay benefits to claimants in a timely manner. The U.S. Department of Labor has set a timeliness standard that 87% of claimants receive benefits within 3 weeks of filing an initial claim. As shown in Exhibit 7 on page 24, Labor has historically achieved this goal but has fallen short since the beginning of the pandemic because of the overwhelming number of claims filed. Labor continues to perform well below prior levels despite the lower claim volume in the end of federal programs. The timeline to process appeals has also lagged behind established targets. The industry standard for an appeal to be processed by the Lower Appeals Division, or LAD, is within 45 days. In the case that a claimant is not satisfied with the decision of LAD, they may request an appeal from the Board of Appeals that has a processing time goal of 40 days. You can see in Exhibit 8 on page 25 that while the Board of Appeals was generally handling appeals cases within the 40-day timeframe in fiscal 2020 and 2021, the appeals backlog grew in fiscal 2022, and there was still an average pending case age of 52 days in fiscal 2023. In fiscal 2024, there was an increase as 19% of appeals cases were processed within the 45-day target, which was the first increase since fiscal 2019. Additionally, the average age of cases also declined to 38 days in fiscal 2024. Moving on to the Division of Unemployment Insurance Audit. Back in November 2022, OLA had released a fiscal compliance audit for the Division of Unemployment Insurance. This audit contained 4 repeat findings from the previous audits, resulting in the fiscal 2024 budget restricting $100,000 in general funds until corrective action had been taken. OLA submitted a report in May 2024 indicating that corrective actions have not been sufficient in resolving the agency's problems, and as a result, the $100,000 was not released to the Division of Unemployment Insurance. Moving on to the third issue, the Maryland Small Business Retirement Savings Board, or MSB-RSB, was created by Chapters 323 and 324, 2016, to administer the Maryland Small Business Retirement Savings Trust and Program, known as Maryland Saves. MSB-RSB is not a part of Labor. However, Labor has provided funds to MSB-RSB in the form of a loan of $900,000 in fiscal 2024 and 2025. A loan of the same value, $900,000, is again provided in the fiscal 2026 allowance. Moving on to the fourth issue, apprenticeships. Labor is responsible for approving new apprenticeship programs, as well as changes to current programs and ensuring the compliance with state and federal requirements. Apprenticeships are available to individuals aged 16 and older and may last from 1 to 6 years. Funding for Maryland's registered apprenticeship programs has increased significantly, and the state has engaged in increased efforts to study and improve the state's apprenticeship system. You can see in Exhibit 9 on page 27, the growth in inactive apprentices to more than 11,000 in each of fiscal 2022 through 2024. In fiscal 2024, Labor reported an increase of 500 active apprentices, while the number of apprenticeship programs increased each year in fiscal 2022 and 2023. However, the number of apprenticeship programs decreased between fiscal 2023 and 2024, going from 41 to 35. And with that, we move on to the operating budget recommended actions. And DLS recommends 6 actions. The first is to add the following language to the general fund appropriation, restricting $250,000 in funding till a report is submitted showing the status of repeat findings. To add the following language to the second recommendation is to add the following language to the special fund appropriation, reducing $13.8 million from the special fund appropriation for the PDA contingent on the enactment of legislation reducing the share of VLT proceeds distributed to the PDA. The third recommendation DLS makes is making the $33 million from the new special fund for the Office of Unemployment Insurance contingent on the enactment of legislation. The fourth recommendation is to adopt the following narrative: unemployment insurance performance status. The fifth recommended action is to reduce the special fund appropriation for the family program, for family special funds for the family program in the Division of Paid Leave by $17.6 million, contingent on the enactment of legislation delaying the implementation of the program. The sixth recommendation is to reduce the special funds in the Division of Paid Leave by $15.2 million, as the amount included in the fiscal 2026 allowance is greater than the program's need to implement the program. And there is a Budget Reconciliation Financing Act recommended action, and DLS recommends amending a provision to reduce the amount of video lottery terminal proceeds going to the PDA from 6% to 5%, with additional revenue going to the general fund in fiscal 2026 and 2027, and then the blueprint for Maryland's future fund beginning fiscal 2028. And that concludes my presentation. I am happy to take any questions.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Senator Rosapep, welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your hospitality. I actually do have one question for the
Go ahead.
analyst. And that is right at the beginning. You talk about the this is on page 4, the $9.3 million of ARPA money that went to the workforce boards that has not been spent.
Yes. Hang on, I have some information on that. So Exhibit 10 on page 32 provided an update for that.
Yep.
So they currently have, so the fiscal 2022 and 2023 budgets provided a total of $75 million in federal funds.
Yep.
Overall, for their fiscal 2023 appropriation, they've expended $27.8 million.
Right.
Or 75% of that year's appropriation. While there's still about $9 million or so
Right.
left to expend.
My question is, given that it has not been spent, can it be recaptured?
I'm not entirely sure.
Could you check that out?
I can check that out,
Great,
certainly.
thank you. That was my question, Madam Chair.
My expert to my right says the answer should be no.
Is fiscal 2024 money, that was withheld?
I think that's, I think it is the FY 2024, right? It needs to be spent by July 1st of 2026.
So that,
You're talking.
Oh, it's two different topics, never mind.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to solve it right now, but if we find out if given that it's not been spent, to give you a little budget problem, to see if it can be recaptured.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other comments from committee members? Okay, thank you very much. We have some witnesses. Oh, yes, Secretary Wu, come on up. I couldn't find you before.
Apologies, I was testifying
Okay.
on one of the governor's bills on the other side, so I ran over.
You can go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair King, Vice Chair, and members of the subcommittee. For the record, I am Portia Wu, Secretary of the Maryland Department of Labor. Seated with me at the witness table is Deputy Secretary Jason Perkins Cohen, and we have many division leaders and staff here to answer any questions that you may have. I want to thank Governor Moore, Lieutenant Governor Miller, and the Department of Budget and Management for their support for the Labor Department and this budget proposal. And of course, particularly want to thank Scott Benson, the DLS Labor Department analyst, for his thorough analysis. Maryland is at a pivotal moment. Federal changes will have massive impacts on our economy. So now more than ever, our state needs to prioritize economic growth, diversification, and resilience. We must build pathways of opportunity and strengthen economic safety nets and critical protections. The department's budget answers this call by focusing on 4 key imperatives. First, growing Maryland's skilled workforce, particularly in lighthouse and growth sectors like cybersecurity, biotechnology, aerospace, healthcare, and infrastructure. Second, creating more pathways of opportunity for Marylanders through registered apprenticeship, licensing, and education and training programs, which will also provide the talent that Maryland businesses need to grow. Third, safeguarding Marylanders' economic and financial security through sound regulation and protecting workers and consumers. And fourth, supporting our social safety net systems to support Marylanders in these uncertain economic times. I wanted to highlight a few areas in my remarks and then, of course, turn to the specific recommendations from DLS. A key proposed investment to drive growth is increased funding for the Earn Maryland program. Every dollar invested in Earn leads to over $18 in total economic impact. This additional investment of $5 million in the budget could train 1,600 workers to move into good jobs in in-demand fields in critical sectors like healthcare through registered apprenticeship and other employer-driven training models. The budget also contains $5 million for the Cyber Maryland program, $3 million in general funds contingent on legislation, and $2 million in economic growth dedicated purpose account funds for fiscal 2026. The department respectfully requests that the Budget Committee reject the cut proposed by DLS to cyber workforce investments. The DC, Maryland area has the largest supply-demand gap for cyber roles in the country. We have thousands of jobs open in this area with a median wage of over $130,000. The recent ransomware attack on Frederick Health shows that this is an area where we cannot afford to not be vigilant and not invest. The proposed budget also made needed investments in registered apprenticeship, utilizing funds already designated by the General Assembly. These proposals support items included in the Governor's Raise Act legislation, including driving expansion in growth industries, incentives to small business and other employers, updated tools and streamlined processes. And of course, we thank Senator Rosapep for his leadership in this area and the work of the 2030 Commission in driving many of these recommendations. We also must help individuals who face barriers to move into good jobs, including Marylanders exiting the criminal justice system and returning home. This budget invests $2.7 million in correctional education to correct a prior budgeting error, and ensure existing services and correctional ed can be continued without disruption. The budget continues to support the department's Talent Innovation Fund to launch programs leveraging philanthropic dollars to develop workforce express lanes to address shortages in critical fields like nursing and new areas like biotechnology and aerospace. Finally, social safety nets such as unemployment insurance must be there to support Maryland during this uncertain time. The state's UI program is faced with an ongoing structural deficit. As the analysis pointed out, we are still struggling with managing this program and making sure that it is timely. Part of the reason for that is that federal reimbursement for administrative funds has decreased in recent years. It has not kept up with the pace of handling fraud and more expensive IT. We cannot pay for those costs from the trust fund. So toward that end, the department asks the Budget Committee to support a provision that's included in the BRFA to establish an administrative fee on UI taxable wages, while at the same time reducing employers' contributions into the trust fund by that same amount, so employers will not experience an additional cost as a result of that fee. That provision is going to be critical to providing support for UI admin during this time when we unfortunately expect there will be many more claims and demands on the system. Finally, the department recognizes the value of paid family and medical leave and remains committed to building a strong program that is good for Maryland's economy, supports workers, and keeps our state competitive. Extending the timeline for this program does mean special funds anticipated in FY26 will no longer be available. So Maryland is working with the Budget Committee and DBM to determine other appropriate funding to ensure the development of the program continues. This proposed budget supports a strong future for Maryland, where our state continues to invest in economic growth and builds economic prosperity for all. I'd like to quickly touch on some of the recommended actions, if that's all right, Madam Chair. Specifically, I'll go through them quickly. The first one, which was discussed a bit before, was language restricting funds pending resolution of repeat audit findings. The department respectfully disagrees with this recommendation. According to a letter that we submitted to the budget committees, or that OLA originally submitted, we had a number of repeat findings under review. The department has resolved most of these. Some of them, however, are ones that Maryland Labor simply cannot resolve. For example, finding 3A recommends that Labor establish procedures to match state higher education institution enrollment records to identify and follow up on claimants who are full-time in school but didn't disclose this. We cannot do that. We've consulted with our attorneys. We're simply not able to do that because of some restrictions in FERPA. So while we recognize that's a finding, it is a barrier in existing law, and so we're just not able to resolve the recommendation. And we'll also note at this time, restricting funding on the Office of the Secretary, we have an evolving situation here at the federal level. So, a $250,000 restriction obviously would impair our ability to be responsive in this absolutely critical time. The next item is to add language to reduce the special fund appropriation for the purse dedication account contingent on the enactment of legislation reducing the share of video lottery terminal revenue distributed for this purpose. We respectfully disagree with this recommendation. The racing industry has already had to reduce purses and breeding incentives for the current year, and this proposed reduction will cause the racetrack to reduce racing dates. We already struggle with competing with neighboring states. We have our executive director from the Racing Commission here to answer further questions. I admit I'm not a total expert on that one. We concur with some of the other recommendations, language to make this special fund appropriation from the UI Administrative Expense Fund contingent on legislation, establishing it, of course, and a narrative on requesting a report on UI's efforts to reach payment goals and address the backlog of appeals. We understand, this is a high level of concern. We still have a lot that needs to be improved. Maryland UI procured a system in the midst of the pandemic in 2020, which honestly has never had the functionality that we had pre-pandemic, and it was highlighted in the DLS analysis that we have simply not gotten back to timely stats, even though we have a much lower level of claims. So we need to keep working on that. And then, of course, I believe recommendation 5 and 6 were around language for the division of paid leave, and we understand we will work with the committee and with DBM to adjust given everything that's noted. I think I hit all of them. And then I think Berfa also has the, there was also a recommendation about reducing the amount of video lottery terminal proceeds. I think I've covered that as well. We disagree with that recommendation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I have a quick question for you, and I think you
Madam
could
Chair.
answer it in a minute. Back in 2020, I'm going to say, House Bill 722, there was talk in there about heat stress standards. Where are we with that now?
Thank you, Madam
In
Chair.
implementing that?
Absolutely. So you're right. There was legislation at that time. When I started at the department had drafted a set of rules. The legislation explicitly required engagement with stakeholders. And something I heard from many quarters when I came in is, and I understand it was during pandemic, we weren't seeing each other very much in person then, was that they felt there had been insufficient engagement. So we went back to the drawing board. We had stakeholder sessions meeting with hundreds of stakeholders around the state, getting input. We published our proposed rules and got input from that. We have something called the MOSH Advisory Council, our Occupational Safety and Health Advisory Council, that includes industrial hygienist experts, industry. They reviewed our new rule. The new rule was published and finalized last year. We finalized it in the fall with a thought that there would be more time for people to come into compliance before things get really hot this summer. I understand there may be some discussion about whether there should be a restriction on enforcement of this rule. Maryland Labor feels strongly that we have done a lot of engagement. Unfortunately, we have seen that heat can be harmful, if not deadly, in cases, and the rule is really common sense. It's very similar to rules that have been passed in other states. It's about rest, water, breaks, and easing in or acclimatization. We have heard from industry that they would like more guidance on how to apply the rules specifically to their workplaces, and we are working to provide that. We recognize the rule is very broad. It's indoor and outdoor workplaces. That was explicit in the statute, so we had to tackle that. But for example, the Restaurant Association says, how do we make this work? Or construction and landscaping, frankly, they've been dealing with heat for a long time, but things are hotter than they used to be. So we are ready to provide that guidance, but we would urge the committee not to consider restricting the rule moving forward. Our goal is to focus on compliance. We're not about trying to do gotchas on employers for a new rule. We want to make people aware of it and help them comply and protect their workers.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from the committee? Comments? Senator Rosepep.
Thank you once again. Good to see you, Madam Secretary.
Nice to see you, Senator.
Deputy Secretary, and I appreciate all you're doing in all kinds of ways. I've got a series of small questions. On page 10 of the analysis, it has a series of bullets about various legislative priorities. I just want to kind of understand the status. The third bullet is $300,000 for EARN focused on residential rental housing industry. What's going on? Do we know?
You want to take that one?
Sure. And I have Assistant Secretary Roth behind me, but that was something that passed the legislature. Right. We're about to release the RFP.
Out there now.
The RFP is out there now and will be awarded soon.
An RFP for a what? I'm trying to get my head around this. I mean, I get what the industry is, and I get the need for jobs, but what's going to happen? What's the $300,000 going to be spent for?
Sure.
Have to go take the mic. Yes.
Thank you.
No problem.
And thank you for the question and interest in our work. Erin Roth, Assistant Secretary for the Division of Workforce Development and Adult Learning. So we recently released we received, passed by the General Assembly, $300,000 specific to addressing the leasing training shortage in our state. We anticipate with that funds, we'll be able to fund 2 new EARN grant programs. So we have a solicitation out specific to that specific industry and that $300,000 now. And we'll review proposals and make probably 2 awards is our assumption.
But so EARN grants are basically to employers or group of employers for a specific training program. So essentially for training programs run by employers or groups of employers. Is that the idea?
In order to apply, they'll need at least 5 employers from that from a given partner, to form a strategic industry partnership with 5 employers at least, educational partners, et cetera. So yes, that's true.
Okay, then that answers my question. I appreciate it. What is the status of the school bus driver wage study? I should know. Is it done? Is it going to be done?
No, I think it's still in process. I think we tried to get the money on the street. The bid that came back was too high, so we had to redo it.
So what do we think the schedule is?
I think it'll be in 2025.
It'll be done this year?
That's our goal, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then the skills-based hiring study.
Yeah, that one, we are heading to BPW in the month of March, assuming things go well. It's a sole source contract is what we'll be putting forward, but we have to wait for it to be approved. If it's approved by BPW, it should be done by the end of the fiscal year, June 30th.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. And then page 15 is the Talent Innovation Program. Again, what's actually happening?
Sure.
I'm happy to answer.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, speak at once.
Wanted to be respectful. So we have proposed $4 million total for the Talent Innovation Fund for this fiscal year. You'll recall last year we passed that bill into law with an initial investment of $2 million that's been allowed us to establish the cyber ranges that the community colleges are implementing in the state. This year, our plan with that $4 million is to really look at the lighthouse sectors that the Secretary mentioned, and healthcare, I would say, is a priority as well. So we are looking to, as the Governor mentioned in I think a press conference maybe a month or so ago, we're partnering with philanthropy to really target like healthcare, specifically nursing, in a model. So about $2 million, we plan to do that. I think the others, we're looking at aerospace, biotechnology, life sciences to really establish talent accelerators. I think registered apprenticeship is certainly on our minds. And I would say in terms of outcomes, because we know that's important, we think about 2,000 people would be served with that money.
But you haven't sorted out how the money would be spent?
Senator, I think if I could follow on the Assistant Secretary's comments, we know we certainly, a significant portion of it, of course, we want to see what happens in the budget, but our first priority is the healthcare pathway. As we know, we have a tremendous shortage in nursing in the state, and as was noted, the governor, working in partnership with philanthropy, has already secured commitments, investments with other external groups to invest in these pathways, things that have been successful in other states. So we're mindful of the limited budget climate. The idea with this and cybersecurity, Cyber Maryland, is these dollars are helping us to leverage similar or matching dollars from other sources as well.
What's the size of the philanthropic commitment to that right now?
I don't have a dollar.
The overall commitment that the governor announced was $100 million, and there's
For this?
No.
No. A portion of that will be going to this.
Do we know how much for this?
I don't think we're aware of that quite yet. We're still having conversations with the grantees.
We can follow up, Senator, with a
I'd
specific number.
It'd be helpful to know, obviously,
Yes,
in terms of whether we
absolutely.
keep this money in the budget. I guess you'll not be surprised that I worry a little bit about not putting the money into registered apprenticeships. And I realize registered apprenticeships in nursing are challenging, but other states are doing it. We're way behind other states in terms of nursing apprenticeships, and I would hate to see this money spread around in a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and not really build up our infrastructure of apprenticeships in healthcare. So
Absolutely, Senator. We see this as ecosystem investments, right? We have to create the structure. We're not interested in, I don't say we're not interested. There are many pressing things that sometimes the Assembly brings to us of one-off needs, but we understand the need for structural investment.
No, exactly. No, you and I are on the same page on
I
that.
do just want to point out, like, we're not doing anything without employer engagement, whether it's EARN or TIF. So the first step on the healthcare initiative is to work with the major healthcare employers of Maryland, figure out what their needs are, how best they see to make this pathway to registered nursing.
Yeah, although if I might, I apologize, Madam Chair, for taking time. Okay. I'm happy to pursue this offline, but I got a couple more quick questions. One related to UI, and that is the chart on page 23. And this is, I should know the answer to this, but the chart shows 17.4 million initial claims in 2020. We only have 3 million workers in the state. So I'm trying to get my head around the relationship between initial claims and workers. I mean, is that workers make multiple claims?
Senator, I wasn't here at that time, but I know that, first of all, there were multiple programs, if you recall, right? The federal government kept adding new programs, so people would then apply anew for that program. And unfortunately, as we saw, and you can see here, there's a high number of pandemic claims. There was a lot of fraud during that time as well.
Well, then bringing it back to 2024, 1.2 million claims. Do you have any idea of how many people that is?
It's close. I mean, we can get back to you about how many are distinct individuals. People typically don't get laid off multiple times in 1 year.
I wouldn't think so. That's why I was surprised by the chart. Okay. We're almost there, Madam Chair. I got one page marked. And that is the, oh, no, the question is answered right here. Thank you, Madam Chair. The analyst answered it. I missed it. Thanks an awful lot.
Senator Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Secretaries, for coming. So to piggyback just off a little bit what the Senator was saying about unemployment claims and that type of situation that caused our offices quite a bit of angst, right? I mean, some of us were handling up to 300 unemployment claims a month in our offices. You just said that you anticipated those claims to rise, and I wanted to know what you were putting in place to be able to assist us as our offices get busier, because we can't go back to where we were.
Thank you, Senator. And I want to recognize that I know that there's a lot we need to do to improve in unemployment insurance. Again, I'm newer in this seat, but a lot of my colleagues worked very hard during that time to try to be responsive, but we simply did not have the infrastructure in place. So a couple of things. First of all, I will note, over the longer term, we do need to improve our IT system and modernize. I know we just procured that new system during pandemic, but I think your constituents who apply through it will tell you it is not very user-friendly. It's very difficult, and our IT folks who work on it will say it still has a lot of bugs that have not yet been worked out, so we're committed to doing that, and we have federal funds to do it. What we're putting in place now is we are ramping up, and I referenced the BRFA administrative funding we are seeking. You know, part of the problem is when the feds have not been providing enough administrative funding, we don't have enough people. We don't have enough people on the lines. We don't have enough people processing claims. We are asking for that additional funding so we can put people to work on these claims, because we have to get through them faster. I'd say that's the first thing. We've also put out some dedicated resources, FAQs, and I would say, especially for your federal workers or federal contractors who might be impacted now, we're happy to work with you to do specific webinars. We may be doing something like we did during pandemic for your constituent services people to just walk them through, make sure everybody understands when you need to escalate, we have dedicated people to support your office. So we want to make sure that you're all aware of those, because we recognize it's an important responsibility.
That's what I was getting to. I want to make sure that you recognize and have the dedicated people, so that when we get a claim that we're helping somebody through, that we turn them over to you, and that we know that they're going to receive at least callbacks and things of that nature from your office.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay.
Message received. Yes.
Good question, Senator Bailey. Okay, thank you, Secretary Wu, and we now have some people lined up to testify here. We have Lisa Klingenmeyer, Christian Goebel, Adam Stoddard, Michael Hall, Sharon Roberts, Lisa Watts, Georgina Maybe. You want to come, you can come on, as long as there's chairs, you can come on up. Okay, Lisa Klingenmeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Lisa Klingenmeyer. I'm the Deputy Director of Policy at Maryland Family Network, and I'm the campaign manager of the Time to Care Coalition. We're here today in strong support of the Department of Labor and its budget, and in particular, the work of the Family Division. The Time to Care Coalition has been excited to partner with the Department of Labor and the Family Division as we've been working to implement the Family and Medical Leave Program in Maryland, alongside its very talented team of employees who have been working to create regulations and make sure that the program is ready to go on its timeline. We were excited to hear when earlier in the legislative session, they were 70% of the way there, ready to take contributions this summer, which is on time for the implementation. It is also why 2 weeks ago we were dismayed to hear that the administration is now considering an 18th-month delay to this program because of federal uncertainty. No other state, and there are several states who are in the same part of their implementation timeline that Maryland is, are considering similar delays. No other state has ever taken 6 years from the passage of their legislation to implementing their paid family and medical leave program. You all have several hard decisions ahead of you this year as you're looking at a budget and a massive $3 billion shortfall. This is not one of those hard decisions. This program requires no federal funding. Not only that, but by delaying this program, you're actually going to have to find general funds to cover that department because you're not going to be having the special funds coming in to cover those positions. What's also going to happen is the 247,000 Marylanders who would have been applying for benefits under this program, according to our state's own actuarial study, are now not going to have access to paid family and medical leave. So over those 18 months, they're going to be asking impossible decisions about, can I afford my rent while I'm going through chemotherapy? Can I miss a day's work while I sit with my parent who's in hospice care? Marylanders need the certainty right now that if they get diagnosed with cancer like I did in 2020, or if they're going on deployment and they need time off, that they will not also have to lose their income too. We strongly urge you to support the Department of Labor, support the current timeline for the family program. We urge you to resist any delay to that implementation, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Senator Quarterman.
Quick question. I apologize. You mentioned multiple times about the timeline that was on time, but this timeline's been pushed back by a couple of years. So I'm trying to define, what are you talking about on time?
The current timeline, it was pushed back twice. This would be the third delay for the program.
Okay.
The first time it was pushed back was because the program was passed under the governor, under Governor Hogan, and there was not any, the family team wasn't even created. So when the Moore Miller administration came in, we had to delay the program because there was literally no department that even existed. But this delay is not for reasons like that. This delay is different.
Because there's no money.
Pardon me?
This delay is because there's no money for it.
No, that's not why this delay is happening. This program has nothing to do with federal funding. This program is already funded. The money that covers the staffing of this program has already been allocated, and the contributions that'll come in cover the cost of this program entirely.
We'll talk later.
Christian Goebel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Christian Goebel. I serve as the Legislative and Political Coordinator with AFSCME Maryland Council 3. Our union represents approximately 50,000 public service workers at the state, county, and municipal levels of government across Maryland. AFSCME Council 3 urges the General Assembly to provide more full-time merit positions for the Maryland Occupational Safety and Health Administration. We recognize that this is a difficult budget season, but we strongly urge the General Assembly to consider this request. In 2024, our union lost 3 of our brothers, Agent Davis Martinez, Mr. Ronald Silver II, and Mr. Timothy Cartwell. Agent Davis Martinez worked as a parole and probation officer for the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, while Mr. Silver and Mr. Cartwell worked as sanitation workers for the Baltimore City Department of Public Works. Each of these men lost their lives due to events that occurred in the course of their work. In addition to the tragic loss of these men, our union members experience hazardous working conditions that place their safety and health at risk. For example, in 2024 alone, 3 correctional officers at the North Branch Correctional Institution were stabbed and required medical treatment. Data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics confirms that public employees experience higher rates of occupational injuries than their private sector counterparts. In 2023, over 350,000 workers were employed by the state, county, and municipal governments in Maryland. Across our state, there are approximately 1,400 state-owned facilities, more than 1,400 public schools, and countless other county and municipal work sites across our state. During federal fiscal year 2023, MOSH conducted 1,167 private sector safety and health inspections, while 69 safety and health inspections were conducted in the public sector. The administration's proposed 2026 allowance allocates 96 positions to MOSH. Our union urges this body to increase the allowance provided to MOSH. Investing in occupational safety and health is a good investment that benefits everybody. Increased training, education, and consultation services assist employers with proactively creating safer workplaces and deters the proliferation of hazardous working conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam Stoddard.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Adam Stoddard, and for about the last 10 years, I've worked for the Maryland Department of Labor as an investigator within the prevailing wage unit. Additionally, I'm proud to serve as the trustee of AFSCME Local 3641, which represents the workers of the Maryland Department of Labor. Now let me ask you something. How'd you like to work at a job that's unsafe, where you're likely to get physically hurt? Or maybe a job where you get cheated or somebody takes advantage of you? Or what happens when life takes a turn and you or someone you know is out of work and need help? Help to make ends meet, help to find a job, help learning new skills, or perhaps with a second chance in life. These are the kinds of things that we at the Department of Labor see and do every day for Marylanders. Protecting workers and creating opportunities. In the last 10 years, I've witnessed the number of prevailing wage projects significantly increase with no change in the resources allocated or dedicated to the enforcement. That is until now. Our union would like to thank the administration, which has dedicated more resources to the wage and hour investigators in our agency. Additionally, our union is pleased to see that the 2026 allowance includes an additional 125 regular positions in the Office of Unemployment Insurance to support in-house operations. Frankly, there's nothing better than bringing more jobs to the people of Maryland. We are completely against subcontracting out functions that our agency can and will do and has done to private contractors for jobs that could have been filled by Marylanders. Additionally, we want to emphasize and kind of echo what Senator Bailey mentioned about kind of supporting these new workers and ensuring that the quality resources are available in training to make sure we can procure long-term success for the agency. We encourage this body to continue investing resources to support the Department of Labor. We support—
Wrap up that thought.
Okay. We support the governor's proposed revenue package and encourage this body to support the Maryland Fair Share Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Hall.
Yes, ma'am. Chairwoman King, sorry. Chairwoman King and members of the committee, appreciate the opportunity to present to you. I train and own and breed standardbred racehorses in the state, raced both at Ocean Downs and Rosecroft Raceway. We saw a lot of you guys a year ago when a lot bigger things were at stake. Fortunately, everything went well. Pimlico Plus was passed and went forward. And the possibility of removing 1% of the purse dedication account will be a significant problem for them. That's the thoroughbred side of the industry, which we're rarely in agreement with, but on this one, we definitely are. It would be almost a 20% cut. If that 1% was taken away, it would serve as a 20% cut on basically my livelihood, along with, the 5,000 other horse industry employees. It's just, I understand that there's budget issues. I also understand there's a lot of different places to get those from. Horse racing has existed, standardbred racing has existed for about 250 years in the state. It's deep-rooted in the state of Maryland. Maryland is horse country more so than Kentucky is. And, this would just be a blow that, we've done very well to survive with what we've been given. And, we couldn't handle that kind of a blow, I don't believe. So I just respectfully request that you guys don't do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon Roberts.
Hi, Chairman. I'm here with Cloverleaf Standardbred Owners Association. I'm the executive director, and I'm also asking that you please not take action on this, reducing the PDA account by 1%. Cloverleaf represents over 450 Maryland Standardbred horsemen and women in the state. We have serious concerns about the proposed reduction to the purse dedication account from 6 to 5%. This seemingly is a minor reduction, but would have significant cascading effects on the Standardbred Breeders' Fund, resulting in a 16% decrease in funding. This fund is crucial for supporting Maryland sired horses and foals here in Maryland, and the cuts would disproportionately impact the small-scale breeding operations that make up roughly 50% of the breeders here in Maryland. Additionally, Winback Farms in Cecil County is the largest standardbred breeder in North America and would adversely affect them. In 2024 alone, Winback horses earned over $20 million and won over 900 races worldwide, demonstrating their significant contribution to the industry. Furthermore, the proposed PDA reduction would lead to over a 16% decrease in overnight purses for Ocean Downs and Rosecroft. These accounts primarily benefit Maryland residents, with the Maryland connections as of 80% of overnight purses paid to them. Of the 12,000 horses that race annually in Maryland, approximately 9,700 are Maryland-owned, sired, and bred, and highlight the importance of these accounts in the local industry. Maryland Standardbred racing industry has faced substantial funding reductions due to the introduction of various alternative gaming options in the state. The current 6% direct contribution to the Maryland Purse Dedication Account has been essential in maintaining the industry's viability.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When I went with the committee to Winback Farms a couple of years ago, it was one of the nicest field trips we've ever had as a committee. It's just such a beautiful place up there, and the horses are so beautiful. And
it is beautiful.
So
and
nice.
We invite you all to some of our smaller breeding farms here in the state of Maryland also. We have one in southern Charles County.
Mm-hmm.
And if you guys would like to come, we'd love to have you see that side of it also.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. We'll do our best.
Okay.
Lisa Watts.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I'm Lisa Watts. I'm the General Manager and Director of Operations at Rosecroft Raceway. I've worked there for 38 years. I'm here today to express my strong opposition to the proposed reduction of the VTL percentage to the purse dedication account from 6% to 5%. This reduction would have significant negative consequences for horse racing, Maryland's economy, tourism, agriculture, and open space. The funding allocated to the purse dedication account supports critical initiatives that reinforce and contribute to the infrastructure of Maryland racing. A reduction of even 1% would undermine the industry's stability and impact all of the progress, programs, and services derived from racing operations. For instance, Rosecroft Raceway provides the majority of the racing opportunities for the standardbred industry in the state of Maryland. Standardbred racing is the purpose and the economic anchor of our business. The purse dedication funding solidifies the ability to provide racing opportunities, sustaining the business, which in turn provides significant support to the community. We foster community relationships with a lot of different organizations, including the U.S. Capitol Police, Prince George's County Public Schools, St. Ignatius Church, area civic associations, USA Boxing through the Silver Gloves Boxing Tournament and the Golden Gloves Boxing Tournaments, community days, various food and clothing drives. We also house PEPCO and WSSC for storm management. We provide them space during storm management. A decrease in funding will not only limit resources, but also place additional burdens on already strained systems, affecting the well-being and economic stability of our community. I urge you to reconsider the funding reduction and advocate for maintaining or increasing the current VTL percentage allocation to the purse dedication account. Investing in horse racing is an investment in the prosperity and welfare of our constituents, ensuring continued progress and stability. Thank you for your attention to this critical matter, and I appreciate your leadership and commitment to serving the best interests of our community.
Thank you. I think that's everyone. Is anyone, I haven't missed anybody. How about Georgina Maybe? She here?
She's across the street.
Okay, okay.
We'll save you 2 minutes.
I think, is there anybody else that wanted to give their opinion on this? I think we're good. Thank you very much. Thanks for all coming down.
Thank you.
Okay, University of Maryland College Park campus. Sarah Baker is our analyst, and Dr. Daryl Pines, president, is here. It's a good thing you're crazy about us making you wait this long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to start with Exhibit 1 on page 4, which shows the trends in first-time applications. Within 21, the number of applications jumped up 56% due to College Park's move to Common App, and has continued to increase to the highest number of 60,000 in 24. Turning to enrollment on page 5, as shown on Exhibit 2, fall 24 enrollment grew for second year, increasing 1.8%. And this is mainly due to a 20% increase in the number of transfer students. So according to College Park, when the numbers for the new freshmen were coming in lower than the original goal, more transfer students were omitted to offset the lower than expected freshman enrollment. Turning to Exhibit 3 on page 7 in retention rates, the second year rate reached 94% with the 2020 cohort and has since declined to 91%. And the third year raise declined from 83% with the 2019 cohort to 78% with the 22 cohort. So part of the decline in 21 and 22 cohorts may be attributed to the impacts of the pandemic, and they have yet to go back to their pre-pandemic levels. Exhibit 4 on page 8 shows the 6-year graduation rates. And overall, the rates for all groups of students increased with the 2017 cohorts and has remained stable with the rate exceeding 80%. Now, as I mentioned before, a key factor improving student success is access to financial aid. And to that end, as shown on Exhibit 5 on page 9, are the total expenditures on institutional aid, which grew 63% or $93.9 million in 2024. Most of the increases occurred in 23 and 24 due to spending on need-based aid growing by $22.2 million. This is due to the launch of the Terrapin Commitment in the spring of 23. This is College Park's largest single-year investment in need-based aid. And the goal of the program is to reduce the gap between a student's total financial aid package and the cost of attendance, ensuring that in-state tuition fees are fully covered for resident Pell-eligible students. Now, as you've seen before in other analysis, the students receiving aid are more likely to persist and graduate, and this is illustrated on Exhibit 6 on page 10, and those receiving aid will graduate at a higher rate than those who do not receive aid. Exhibit 7 on page 11 shows undergraduate degree production, which has declined to a little under 8,000 in 24, and this may be attributed to the effects of the pandemic. Overall, since 2018, the number of STEM degrees awarded has increased 50.5%. Exhibit 8 on page 13 shows unrestricted expenditures by program area between 24 and 25. Overall, spending increased 0.5% or $11.5 million. Spending increases in all program areas is mainly related to contractual services. And the $63.7 million decrease expenditures in instruction is mainly related to a $40 million transfer to the plant fund in 24. Turning to the proposed budget on page 14 in Exhibit 9, state funds decreased 4.9% or $39.5 million when excluding the impact of the 25 general salary increases in 26, and as you know, they're not included in the 25 working appropriation. As shown on page 15, increases in state support include $1.4 million for equipment debt service and the opening of a new facility, $1 million relating to the restoration of funding for the Empowering Joint Steering Committee that was removed in the BP cost containment action, and $750,000 as mandated by statute for the University of Maryland Institute for Health Computing. The decreases not only include the 5% reduction to state support, but also $250,000 for the legislative addition that did not receive funding in the allowance. We asked the President to comment on how College Park will address the reduction in state support. Turning to funding for a full-time equivalent student on page 16, as shown on Exhibit 10, prior to 23, tuition and fee revenues per FTES exceeded that of state funding. From 22 to 24, state funding per full-time equivalent student grew almost 40% or by $6,300 per FTES. And this reflects salary increases in those years in the restoration of the 21 BP reductions. The recommendation is on page 17, is as see the system USM overview for system-wide recommendations, and that concludes my presentation.
Nice job. Dr. Pines, welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. It's great to see you and distinguished members of this committee. It's my honor and privilege to be here to tell you about the flagship university. I also would like to thank our analyst, Sarah Baker, who's done a wonderful job, as she always does. I would also like to thank you, Governor Moore, and the entire General Assembly for being such tremendous partners and sharing our belief in the power of higher education. This is a moment of opportunity for the state of Maryland, both locally and globally, from projects addressing grand challenges such as literacy and the health of our food, water, and energy, to new initiatives in leading innovation areas such as artificial intelligence, quantum, and bioengineering. We have the resources, talent, and creativity needed to help make the lives of people in our state more healthy, secure, and prosperous. And the rest of the world is noticing. We're now ranked number 44 by U.S. News and World Report among national universities, our best ever showing, and a 20-spot leap since 2020. We also are number 17th among public schools, our highest position in more than a decade. In terms of innovation, the Princeton Review and Entrepreneur magazine ranked us number 1 in the Mid-Atlantic and number 5 among public institutions, our 10th straight year in the top 10. And along with the University of Maryland, Baltimore, our research enterprise is number 11 among publics and number 18 overall among all U.S. institutions, public or private, with a $1.4 billion in combined research expenditures. At the same time, we're continuing to serve the young people of our state through programs such as Terrapin Commitment, which you heard from Ms. Baker, which is the largest investment in need-based scholarships in our history and making sure no Marylander is denied the chance of a college education because of their income. Of course, none of this happens by accident. And I'd like to thank you, all of you, and the entire General Assembly, again, for being such tremendous partners with higher education. I also like to thank you for your continued support of the Empower Initiative, the strategic partnership between the University of Maryland, College Park, and the University of Maryland, Baltimore. Now entering its 10th year, Empower has had tremendous success in spurring research, student experiences, and collaboration between distinguished scholars. In just the past year alone, Empower has resulted in 17 new startups, 98 patents, the creation and retention of more than 1,000 jobs, and hundreds of millions of dollars in investment, grants, and revenue through the Center for Maryland Advanced Ventures and the Maryland Momentum Fund. From the Institute for Health Computing in Montgomery County to the new Edward St. John Center for Translational Engineering and Medicine in the city of Baltimore, Empower is at the forefront of using innovative technology for the public good. So in conclusion, I was asked in the DLS analysis to comment on how the University of Maryland will address the reduction in state support. The University of Maryland plans to address the current round of reductions in state support through a range of actions designed to lower expenses and increase revenues. To manage expenses, we plan to slow down our hiring and strategically manage positions. We will reduce non-personnel expenses, including but not limited to travel, professional consultants, supplies and materials, and equipment purchases. In addition, we will reduce facilities expenses while continuing to focus on those related to health and safety, compliance with laws and regulations, and critical systems maintenance. We will explore areas to increase efficiencies through restructuring and streamlining our operations. Additionally, we will look to increase revenues wherever possible. For instance, we will attempt to increase professional master's degree programs and pursue other entrepreneurial activities. It is important to note we will prioritize the safety of all of our students and our faculty and our staff. And in all we do, we will protect the academic core of the campus to the greatest extent possible. I'll be happy to take any questions if you have them.
Thank you so much. 2 points I have to make to you, Dr. Pines. One is that last play in the basketball game last night about broke my heart.
It broke all of our hearts.
Yeah. And I've spent a lot of time with the pages the last couple weeks, and Some of them are happy because they got accepted to UMD, and others are pretty mad because they didn't. It's been very interesting talking to them, and it's so good to hear them be so proud to be accepted there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, thank you.
it's very good. Any questions from the committee? I think we're good. Oh, wait, Senator Benson.
Good afternoon,
Mike,
Senator
wait a
Benson.
minute. There we go.
You all have a huge surplus at the University of Maryland College Park. Is that so? And what do you all, why do you have that much money?
What do you mean by a surplus?
It's 100 and, I think it's about 130 something, $130 million
Are you talking about fund balance or?
in finance.
Okay. I mean, I can only think of fund
Am I
balance.
making a mistake? Is this? I think that I looked at the
You're not
budget
talking
and
about the
that's what I
fund
saw.
balance, Senator Benson. I'm not sure what it is you're talking about.
I'm sorry?
It's not the fund balance.
It's not the fund balance?
No.
Okay. We'll talk about that then.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the surplus at that level. Oh, sorry, I don't know those details.
You'd like to.
I would love to have that surplus.
Okay, thank you,
All right,
Dr. Pines.
thank you so much.
And again, sorry we made you wait for so long.
No worries. Sorry about the basketball score.
We have Todd Holden here. Come on up.
Afternoon, Chair King and members of the committee. I am Todd Holden, and I am the president of AFSCME Local 1072, which represents over 4,000 workers at the University of Maryland College Park. I would say that I appreciate the assurances that we've received recently from this committee in this hearing, and also from the USM and the institution that they plan to try to protect the uncertainty that everyone is facing in the future. Pardon me. But I will say that our membership can definitely report that they are feeling extremely anxious about the future. When Dr. Pines says strategically managing positions, I think that a lot of middle managers have already, taken the cat out of the bag proactively and said that staff are going to bear the burdens of any potential cuts. And we just want to make sure that in your oversight role, and certainly as the USM and College Park contemplate a way forward, that protects the workers who make things happen. Especially considering that, it's true that the university has an awful lot of talent and creativity, but it does not have all the resources that it needs, especially when it comes to staffing, right? People are doubled up in positions. People are often pressured to work more than 100% of their normal effort only because positions traditionally have not been backfilled for several years. We also consider the fact that, while wages have increased, thanks to the efforts of AFSCME and others, people are still technically behind inflation. And if the future holds what we think it is going to, that's going to be a lot worse for a lot of people. So we would encourage you to be deliberative in what happens, but also make sure that, keeping the workers' interests in the forefront is something that we all should be doing. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. If we had a crystal ball, it'd be really nice to be able to see what that future holds. And, you hear the same news that I hear on the television, and we just know we've got to work together as a team and come out of this the best we can. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it won't be because it's so unknown, whether it will be with pain or without pain, but we will work together to come out well. Did you have comments, Senator Benson? Do you want to say something? No? Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, who are we doing next? Okay, we have the Department of General Services. no, one more, sorry. That's all right. We're happy to have them here. David Propert is the analyst, and Secretary Atif Chowdhury. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. The fiscal 2026 budget for the Department of General Services, or DGS, increases by $32.1 million, or 18.3%, to $207.3 million. Moving to page 4, the Office of State Procurement serves as the control agency for commodities, facilities maintenance, and construction. This office has an objective to complete 80% of large procurements, which are defined as procurements valued greater than $100,000 within 90 days. As shown in Exhibit 1 on page 5, there have been no managing for results data for the percentage of large procurements completed within 90 days since fiscal 2021. It remains unavailable because of data integrity issues related to the transition from the Financial Management Information System to the eMaryland Marketplace Advantage, or EMA, procurement system. These data integrity issues should be reconciled when EMA is complete. However, delays in project development have been ongoing for several years. Appendix 2 provides more information on the EMA major IT project. DGS has previously reported that it is more effective to combine procurements that have a common commodity or service into larger procurements. Therefore, DGS has a goal to reduce the total number of procurements through strategic sourcing. Despite this goal, new procurements increased substantially from fiscal 23 to 24, rising by 264%. Additionally, the percentage of competitive services procurements valued over $50,000 with 2 or more bids decreased from 95% in fiscal 23 to 68% in fiscal 24. DGS should comment on why the number of new procurements increased substantially and why competitive services procurements are generally receiving fewer bids. On December 18th, 2024, the governor signed an executive order directing the Office of State Procurement to develop and implement a centralized statewide contract management process in coordination with the Maryland Department of Transportation, Department of Information Technology, in addition to other operational changes to streamline and centralize the procurement process. DGS should comment on the implementation timeline for these changes and if any funding is included for this purpose in the fiscal 26 allowance. Moving to Exhibit 2 on page 6, the state's Minority Business Enterprise, or MBE, program is meant to increase procurement opportunities for minority and women-owned businesses with the goal that 29% of prime and subcontract awards go to MBE qualified businesses. In fiscal 24, DGS awarded $95.2 million in contracts to MBE prime contractors and $49.7 million to MBE subcontractors, which achieved a participation rate of 21.4%, which is the highest level reached since fiscal 2015. On to page 7, DGS contracts with a vendor to maintain a publicly accessible data dashboard related to state agency energy and utility usage. While the information contained in the dashboard provides a means of understanding costs on an aggregate statewide scale, the data has not been complete because the percentage of state facilities with complete data in the database has stagnated at approximately 60% since fiscal 22. In an attempt to get more complete data, DGS started a utility bill centralization pilot program in calendar 2022 for DGS facilities. After seeing successful results, DGS decided in fiscal 23 that it would begin enrolling other state agencies in the program as well. However, the percentage of statewide facilities with complete data in the state energy database only increased from 59.8% in fiscal 23 to 60.3% in fiscal 24. DGS should comment on the status of expanding the utility bill centralization program to other agencies and getting complete information from additional state agencies uploaded to the state energy database. Exhibit 3 on page 8 shows energy spending from fiscal 22 to fiscal 25 year to date for state agencies that have data included in the state energy database. From fiscal 22 to 23, energy costs increased by 16.3%, but from fiscal 23 to 24, energy costs decreased by 8.2%. Exhibit 4 on page 9 lists the utility costs for state agencies that provide information to the state energy database. In calendar 2024, a total of $248.6 million was spent, with almost 2/3 being spent on electricity. Natural gas and water make up the next largest shares at 13% and 7% respectively, while diesel fuel, steam, and other sources make up the final 16%. DGS has a goal of reducing energy consumption and helping the state become more energy efficient, and the agency contracts with a private vendor that audits facilities and recommends improvements to reduce energy consumption. For example, improvements include replacing aging equipment with energy-saving equipment or enhancing insulation. If the savings are greater than the cost of the improvements, the state may enter into a contract with the vendor to implement the recommended improvements. Exhibit 5 on page 10 shows that the state had 19 active energy performance contracts with estimated savings of $20.6 million in fiscal '24. In its fiscal '23 annual report, DGS stated that it had undertaken a project of light emitting diode, or LED, lighting installations in state buildings. DGS estimated that these replacements should result in annual cost savings of approximately $1 million due to lower electricity use. DGS should discuss the ongoing costs and savings from this project to date. In fiscal '25, the Board of Public Works approved 2 cost containment measures for DGS totaling about $727,000 of general funds. On page 11, the fiscal '26 allowance includes 4 proposed efficiency appropriations totaling about $4.9 million. Exhibit 6 on page 12 shows how DGS's $207.3 million allowance is distributed. Facilities operations, maintenance, planning, and security combine to account for 68% of the budget. The business enterprise administration comprises 17%, procurement accounts for 8%, and the final 7% supports administrative costs and real estate management. Exhibit 7 on page 13 outlines major changes driving the net increase of $32.1 million from the working appropriation to the allowance. There is an increase of $15 million in PAYGO capital funding for Trade Point Atlantic's container terminal project in Baltimore County that has been placed in DGS's operating budget. In DGS and the Board of Public Works capital budget analysis, DLS recommends a supplemental budget to move this $15 million of funding from the operating to the capital budget. After accounting for this $15 million, DGS's fiscal '26 allowance increases by $17.1 million. Of that $17.1 million, $10 million will support a new headquarters in College Park for the IonQ quantum computing company. Other increases include $7 million for salary increases and associated fringe benefits, and $340,000 of personnel costs for 4 contractual conversions and 1 new position. Page 15 contains DGS's personnel data. The allowance includes 4 contractual conversions and 1 new position. Among the 80.5 regular positions that were vacant as of December 31st, 2024, 9 have been vacant for more than 1 year. Additionally, a total of 24 new positions created in fiscal 2025 were still vacant as of December 31st, 2024. Of these positions, 12 are in the Office of State Procurement and 10 are in the Office of Facility Security. DLS recommends deleting funds for 12 new positions in the Office of State Procurement that were added in fiscal '25 and remain unfilled. Exhibit 8 on page 16 shows the vacancy rate for regular positions from January 2017 to January 2025. The addition of 24 new positions at the start of fiscal '25 drives some of this growth in vacancies. However, excluding the vacant new positions, DGS still reported a high vacancy rate of 8% as of December 31st, 2024. DLS recommends adopting committee narrative requesting a report from DGS on the status of its vacancies. On to page 17. The litigation stemming from the cancellation of the public-private partnership to redevelop State Center has concluded. On November 20th, 2024, the Board of Public Works approved a settlement of $58.5 million payable to the redevelopment contractor. Of this payment, 80%, or $46.8 million, will consist of general funds, and the remaining 20%, or $11.7 million, will be paid with special funds from the Transportation Trust Fund. Due to the cancellation of State Center's redevelopment, agencies that occupy the complex have been relocating to space within Baltimore City's Central Business District. Committee narrative in the 2024 Joint Chairman's Report requested 2 reports on the status of State Center relocation. And Exhibit 9 on page 18 displays the status of each agency as of January 17th, 2025. The draft report that DGS provided to DLS. 5 of 12 agencies have completed their move to new office space. 2 more are estimated to finish relocating in calendar 2025, and the remaining agencies plan to relocate in calendar 2026. DGS should provide a status update on whether the Maryland Department of Aging has relocated by now as planned. DGS previously had plans to relocate its offices in State Center to 2100 Guilford Avenue in Baltimore City, which was the former location of the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, Division of Parole and Probation. However, as renovation plans progressed, design modifications were found to be necessary and came with greater costs. In response to committee narrative in the 2023 Joint Chairman's Report, DGS reported in January 2024 that it had decided to not move forward with renovation and relocation to 2100 Guilford Avenue. The agency stated that it would issue a request for information to determine alternative uses of the property, but will continue to manage maintenance and security of the site. DGS recently reported that it will relocate to 1 South Street in Baltimore City by April 2026. DGS should comment on any updated plans for the 2100 Guilford Avenue property. Continuing down page 19, the fiscal 22 budget appropriated $50 million in the dedicated purpose account to cover moving expenses, rent, furniture, and other costs for agencies leaving State Center. The fiscal 25 budget added a $30 million deficiency to the dedicated purpose account for fiscal 24. DGS also anticipates that $6.9 million will be reverted to the dedicated purpose account at fiscal 25 closeout from the Department of Labor due to lower furniture costs than expected. There is a provision in the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act of 2025 that would allow the governor to transfer $20 million from the dedicated purpose account set aside in fiscal 25 for the relocation of agencies from State Center to the general fund. After accounting for all of these additions, contingent reductions, and expenditures, there will be an estimated $29.3 million in the dedicated purpose account at the end of fiscal 25. As shown in Exhibit 10 on page 20, DGS provided a list of funding requests by each agency for relocation costs. The requests total $114.9 million, but DGS notes only $95.8 million, or 83%, are eligible for reimbursement from the dedicated purpose account. DGS should comment on how much funding from the dedicated purpose account has been spent in fiscal 25 year to date and how much currently remains in it. DGS should also comment on what sources of funds will be used to cover the requested expenses that exceed the remaining dedicated purpose account appropriation. DLS recommends adding budget bill language restricting funds pending the submission of a report on the status of State Center relocations and moving costs. Moving to page 21, DGS's critical maintenance of state facilities is funded through the operating budget, and projects usually cost less than $200,000. DGS evaluates and prioritizes maintenance projects into 5 categories based on urgency, with number 1 being the highest priority and number 5 being the lowest. As of January 2025, there are 195 projects in the critical maintenance backlog, which is a decrease of 64 projects compared to the 259 reported in January 2024. Exhibit 11 on page 12 shows the cost of critical maintenance projects in DGS's backlog. There was an overall decrease of 13.8%, or $3.8 million in January 2025 compared to January 2024. In October 2024, DGS launched a new grants management system called Submittable to improve its management and oversight of miscellaneous capital grants authorized each session by the General Assembly. At any one time, DGS administers roughly 4,000 active grants, and prior to implementation of the new system, the process was almost completely paper-driven and lacked appropriate procedures and protocols to ensure the effective and timely administration of grants from initial application intake through reimbursement, which can span several years. While the new system should be viewed as an improvement to the process, its implementation lacks sufficient onboarding for grantees and members of the General Assembly on how to access and use the system. As a result, DLS is fielding an increasing number of complaints from grantees and legislators concerning system access and the receipt of timely grant status information for projects. This has forced DLS to act as an intermediary to field and address grantee and member inquiries. DGS has advised that it recognizes the need to make refinements to Submittable, specifically to improve member access, and those refinements are under development. DGS should brief the committee on the essential features of the new grants management system and the steps the agency has taken to ensure that the responsible party of record on each of the approximately 4,000 active grants is sufficiently educated and assisted when using Submittable. DGS should also outline plans for the development of reports that provide key status updates and contact information for DGS staff who can answer questions from legislative staff and other system users. And with that, Madam Chair, I conclude my presentation.
Nice job. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, I am Atif Chaudhry, Secretary of the Maryland Department of General Services. With me here today is Chichin Yaganash, Deputy Secretary, and Willie Tinchao. She is the Chief Financial Officer for the agency. I want to thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to present the fiscal year 2026 operating budget for the Department of General Services. We really appreciate your support and commitment to ensuring the efficiency and effectiveness of state government operations. I want to begin by thanking Governor Moore, Lieutenant Governor Miller, and DBM for their support for our fiscal year 26 budget. But I'd also like to extend our gratitude to David Propert at the Maryland Department of Legislative Service, for his thorough analysis of our budget requests. Just also thank his hard work and dedication for him and his team reviewing our complex operations and our agency. DGS serves as the backbone of state government through its expertise in real estate, construction, procurement, and the management and security of state facilities across the state. Throughout the past year, DGS has remained steadfast in its mission to support all three branches of state government, including state agency partners and advance their initiatives. This includes our offices of facilities management, state procurement, design, construction, and energy, real estate, external affairs, business enterprise administration, as well as the Maryland Capitol Police. At DGS, we take pride in our role as stewards of Maryland's resources, ensuring that the agency functions efficiently in a secure and well-maintained environment. We look forward to working with you to continue advancing these efforts and appreciate your support in our fiscal year 26 operating budget request. With regard to the operating budget recommendations, there was 3. The first was adding language restricting funds pending the submission of a report on state center relocations. DGS concurs with that recommendation. The second one was adopting community narrative, requesting a report on the status of vacancies and hiring. DGS also concurs with this recommendation. And the last one was deleting funding for 12 Office of State Procurement positions added in fiscal year 25 that remained vacant as of December 31st of 2024. DGS respectfully disagrees with this recommendation. These 12 positions within the Office of State Procurement are critically needed as part of the Moore Miller administration's efforts to reform and streamline procurement operations across state government. DGS acknowledges at the end of calendar year 24, these positions were vacant. However, the Office of State Procurement was working diligently to improve processes and procedures and did a critical assessment of staffing needs. As part of that, several position descriptions were updated and edited, and that was part of our initiative there for the hiring and recruitment there. So it's important to note that it's also important to note that procurement-related positions, especially procurement officer positions, can be very difficult to fill across state government. And that's primarily because there's a limited number of people trained in state procurement across the state, and it ends up being an arms race. Everyone just shifting procurement officers around. So that's always a challenge as well. However, due to current efforts regarding these 12 positions currently, as of today, 7 of the 12 positions are currently filled. 2 additional procurement officer vacancies remain unfilled only because offers that were made in January were denied by the applicants, and we're currently in the process of reviewing additional candidates and interviewing them to try and get those hired quickly as well. So we anticipate 2 more procurement officer positions to be filled imminently. With the 3 remaining positions, we are actively in the recruitment process there, and we're wrapping up the interview process for 2 more. So those 3 additional pins should be filled very quickly as well. With regard to the agency was asked to prepare and brief the committees on various topics. You have our written responses before you here today. Being respectful of the committee's time, we're happy to go through them and provide detailed explanations, or just you can read them in your leisure, and otherwise we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
If you could just go through the ones that stand out the most, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll hit a couple of them. Why did procurements increase? There's a few factors for that. One was our data reporting was being updated, so we had better data, which increased the number of procurements that we were tracking. The second thing was that our procurement life cycle tends to fluctuate, so it ebbs and flows what type of procurement you'll have in a given year. And then the third thing was while we are looking at trying to decrease procurements across state government by consolidating, sometimes we break them up intentionally. Sometimes it's better to do them by region, and other times it's better to get more minority, veteran, women, small business participation if we break them up into smaller contracts. So all that was taken into account as part of that. I will also hit on the fact that the utility bill centralization, we are working diligently right now to try and coordinate the full consolidation of that pilot program within DGS and then work with DBM and other agencies to try and facilitate that across other agencies, which has worked well for us. I did want to also highlight that the question was raised regarding the Department of Aging. Has it relocated? And the Maryland Department of Aging has successfully relocated in February of 2025. And one other agency, the Department of Disabilities Telephone Relay Unit, will also be vacating a state center in July of 25. On page 8 of our response, we do have an updated schedule of all the agencies moving out of state center. Everyone else will be moving out of state center by the end of calendar year 2026, so the end of next year. And then I will also talk very briefly about our new grant management system. We are working very diligently to implement that. We moved very quickly to implement it. Typically these type of IT systems can take years to implement. So we moved very, very quickly on a very low budget, trying to get something implemented quickly, because as the analysis indicated, it was a very manual process. It was a centralized email inbox where all the inquiries were coming into, and things were getting lost in the shuffle, and there's lots of delays in getting things done there. So we were able to set up standard workflows, service level agreements, key performance indicators in a new system. We're also releasing very soon what's going to be called CGL Connect, where it will be a system for legislators, for the general public, for grantees to submit additional inquiries without having to go through. Right now, we have it set up where you've got to log into a system, even if you're a new user, and you can go in there and submit any questions or concerns about a respective grant. The new system we're implementing will be more user-friendly, where there is no login. You'll be able to just go on the website and just type in, here's my inquiry, and get a response, and you have it tied in there. Part of that is to be able to track all the inquiries coming in and all the correspondence happening between all the grantees, the legislators, et cetera, and be able to hold our staffing accountable as well to make sure we are responding in a very timely manner for all inquiries regarding grants. And I think that probably hits the major highlights of the
Hits the highlights, yes.
of the highlights.
And the website is going to be strong enough that if it gets a lot of traffic, it'll be able to take it all, right?
Absolutely. Yes, Madam Chair.
Senator Quarterman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it, and thank you, Secretary, for the update here and for being here today. Just want to touch on a couple of things, and kind of at the end, the new system, which I appreciate that, and we're hopeful that it helps alleviate some of the things, because I know the concern, at least in our office, I don't want to speak for everyone here, but I think everyone has had similar challenges. Secretary Wu's not here anymore, but I'd say outside the Department of Labor, we probably get the most inquiries in our office from things at DGS, okay? And quite frankly, they're not usually positive experiences. And, we talk about the new system, quite frankly, just be respectful for what we have seen, the new system's like the old system. And when I say that, I mean, people aren't responding, people aren't getting back to the constituents to the point where they won't even give a simple email or a phone call. We have example, time and time again, timelines of people who reached out to DGS, inquired about a particular grant, and there's simply no response from anybody. And quite frankly, that's unacceptable. We deserve better to our citizens and our constituents. You mentioned there at the end about staff being accountable. I guess my question to you, how are you holding staff accountable? Because we are finding time and time again where staff are not responding at all with a call, an email, anything. How are you holding your staff accountable? I mean, what type of standards are there, things of that nature? Because what we're seeing cannot be the standard going forward. And you've been here now for a couple of years and understanding that, there's some growing period going into this, but we're going into year 3 now where, quite frankly, we're at our limit. When people call us now, we just tell them, well, unfortunately, the department is a mess, and they're working for it, but, working towards that, but it's not, we're at wit's end, to be honest with you. And I'm trying to be as respectful as I can.
Sure.
But again, outside the Department of Labor, this is a huge, huge challenge here, and we need to see some correction. So I guess, again, my question is, how are we holding staff accountable, and what can we do going forward to, the minimum, have return? Look, if you don't have an answer, I get that, but people deserve an answer, at least acknowledgement, and we need to have that.
Sure. So I'll hit a couple things there, Senator. Really appreciate that, the feedback there. So originally, when I came into this position, it was an extremely manual process. Everything was through email or a centralized email inbox or by phone call or by email. When people would leave, things would be lost in the mix, or someone was on vacation, it would be very challenging just to get a regular update. We were getting upwards of 7,000 emails a month regarding the grant program. And that is significant on the number of people just trying to respond to those. The vast majority of the people emailing were just like, hey, where's the status of my grant? I don't understand. I don't know where it is. Some people think, hey, it's July 1. How come the money's not in my account, right? They didn't understand there was a process and forms to fill out, et cetera, and Board of Public Works approval. So walking into that, we took a strategic effort trying to coordinate and develop a system. And now there's been other things that have been tried in the past, and nothing has worked. What we've implemented now is a web-based system. It's a cloud-based system for grantees to be able to, for the first time ever, log in and see the current status of the grant. They can see where they are in the process. They can see the steps they need to follow. We're doing electronic signatures online, coordinating with the Board of Public Works to be able with a centralized location for not just communications between back and forth with a grantee, but also to have all documents in one location. So we moved very quickly to implement this. We were coordinating very closely with grantees to try and do this. Part of the challenges we are experiencing are everyone was very accustomed to, you pick up the phone and you call or you email, and then you coordinate that way with a response. So what we try to do this way is a more consolidated effort to have everyone log into a system. That way we can track the correspondence that way. It can be assigned to a grant manager, a grant administrator that can then follow up with the grantee.
I get all that. But when the grant manager is not contacting people or returning phone calls or emails, that's my issue.
Sure.
You can talk about all the system all you want, okay? But when people aren't returning phone calls or emails and basically they're ghosting. I mean, that's what the kids say. That's what we get out of the department.
Right.
We get ghosting from DGS. And it's easier to get the money in the budget than actually get the money out of DGS. So I apologize for interrupting there, but I don't want to hear about the system. I want to hear about how are you going to have your people respond and serve the constituents of Maryland the way they deserve to be treated.
Right. No, thank you, Senator. And a few things here. So I'll focus directly on the customer service associated with this as well. So the intent there is to consolidate everything in one place. We're bringing on 4 new grant administrators right now, hiring them to help give that level of customer service and personal touch that is necessary. We are certainly and our grant coordinators as well too. We've got 2 different types of people. So grant administrators focus on the grants themselves and putting it through the process. Now we're coordinating grant coordinators, which will be that customer service level of touch, right? Responding to emails, responding to inquiries, the phone calls, those personal touches, to be able to be responsive.
That's what I'm talking about. We need customer service. That's what we want to see going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And Senator, I agree with you 100%. I also, when I came on board in this position, was very frustrated because of the lack of a system, the lack of processes in place. We've set up very strategic service level agreements to say we must be responding within this time frame. And now we're able to hold our people accountable.
What are those time frames? When someone responds to you, what do you anticipate a response back to somebody? What should someone anticipate a response back? I got people going on 2, 3, 4 weeks.
Yeah, so we are updating that, and I've got you chatting that here as well. I know we're coordinating very closely on that. General inquiries are generally responded to within a day or 2 that are submitted to the system. And before that, it was weeks at a time when it's through email. So we're working very closely on that to update that. Part of this is a little bit of a Senator is trying to do 2 things. We're trying to implement a system where we're changing the way we operate to get people to more familiar with utilizing a system where we can track things better. Also hiring additional staff to be able to have that personal touch, have the follow-up, and be able to make sure that we're responding appropriately and quickly. And then the third thing is implementing another methodology where if people are not computer literate, if they are not, don't know how to log in, if it's a legislator, legislative staff, they've got an opportunity to log in, not log in, but just send a general inquiry online to just zap that in so that can be tracked as well. But here, Senator, we're working very diligently to make sure that we are working very closely with, obviously the Maryland General Assembly, the staff, DLS as well, so we can implement measures in place to effectually respond appropriately to everyone. And I can tell you, we will be rolling out this new CGL Connect system hopefully by the end of March, so that should be in the next month or so. But we are adding staff right now to be able to accommodate a lot of these inquiries that are coming in to be able to respond faster.
No, I appreciate it, and Madam Chair, I appreciate the latitude there. The last thing I'll
Absolutely, and can I suggest that if you're still having problems after this hearing today, you talk to Dr. Chowdhury or to Secretary Chowdhury and
No,
find a
most
way to
definitely
get-
will.
Yes,
Thank you,
absolutely.
Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator.
Senator Bailey.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I just follow up on my colleague just for 1 minute. The frustration that we are experiencing, and not even the people that, our constituents that have grants, but when our offices reach out to your office, and we simply ask a contact about who can we talk to, right? Who can we deal with? How can we get a response? And we are ghosted completely by your office, right? And to get not even a response back on an email, that is completely unacceptable, right? And that's just, isn't that so, right?
Absolutely.
Because we'll not tolerate it any longer, right? We just can't.
Sure.
So.
Sure. No, thank you very much, Senator. And I can tell you, we are taking measures in place to revamp processes, add additional staff to change things. And I mentioned previously, some of these type of IT systems typically take, you've seen it, months, years to implement. We rolled one out very, very quickly. So we're catching up a little bit on the change management. We're catching up a little bit on the training and adjusting on resources. But we absolutely hear you. And customer service, for me, is always #1 priority. So that is something we are working on right now to make effective change immediately. So
I'm just talking about having the ability to talk to you, to having the ability to talk to somebody from DGS, so we know when we're making budget decisions, right? What are the options, right? When we don't even get a response back from you, it's just unacceptable.
Sure. Absolutely. And what we will work very diligently to make sure that that part of our metrics in our customer service plan, as we roll out additional measures and add in these additional staff, are going to be, make sure our response times are where they should be, where we get.
Mr. Secretary, there's only 47 of us, and there's only a few of us on the budget. When we're doing this budget situation, we need a person in your office that's accessible to us, right, while we're going through this, right? That we don't need to wait for anything to roll out. I would appreciate if you would send us that information this afternoon.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
If you
Happy
have
to
an
do so.
issue, this is how we can deal with it.
Yes,
Thank
absolutely. Happy to do so.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you.
We appreciate your input here. And this ends the hearing for today.
Thank you.